you know, if there's a big company like Twitter, if you're a developer and someone says, you know, hey, Adam, can you design a page and, you know, make it look like with these icons, kind of a button with that kind of icon in it, you know, cool little, I don't know what that is, animation like that, you know, go do that. It'd be a lot of work. It'd be
give you a deer in the headlights look.
Yeah,
for a little while.
yeah. So that would be a headache. And if coders had to do, you know, different pages on Twitter, say, okay, you know, these icons, da 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 da, and I had to code all those different buttons from scratch, that would be a pain. So people at Twitter and most major companies, they have, you know, their group of designers get together and they create one massive CSS style sheet that all the other developers use. And the great thing about Twitter is that they actually made their style sheet open source. So anybody can use their styles with Bootstrap. Bootstrap came out in 2011, I believe. Right now it's on version 3, but here, version 4 will be coming out soon. I won't cover too much about Bootstrap because it is covered in the online curriculum, but I'm going to talk briefly about it and then I'm going to show you some other cool libraries similar to Bootstrap. Bootstrap's the most popular one right now, but it's quickly changing with the other ones that I'll show you shortly. So a lot of students, you know, when they first start using other people's code, they get pretty freaked out. So let me zoom in so you guys can see this. So you do not have to read through all of this, do not at all. You don't have to memorize any of this. You can think of this just as a reference. And when you use Bootstrap, you will have this page open up all the time. And for example, let's say I want a cool button. These are nice buttons. So let's zoom in. Oh, where did I go? Buttons. I mean, you guys know, this is just HTML, right? But the only thing is, see this class here, this class selector that I was talking about earlier? You're going to be using class selectors a lot. And all this is doing is just referencing that class within the Bootstrap document. And I'll show you the document. It's giant. So this is about 600 to 800 lines of code. Yeah, so you'll probably never look at this, but you can kind of see, you know, okay, these are kind of some interesting selectors you haven't seen. That's a class there with the dot. Yeah, it's a lot. So definitely that would be a pain to do this on your own. But let's just see an example. So let's say this danger button, that's kind of cool, I'm going to use that. So class, button, button, danger. Let's see if we can find it in the CSS. Control find, button, danger. Oh, there it is. Color, I think that's red. Da-da-da. There's some other things happening too in here. But yeah, you know, it's just a big CSS file that, you know, a lot of people spend a lot of time working on, and what's really cool is they're giving everyone access to it.
Well, does this drop down into CSS or just a shortcut?
What, like how do?
Do all the lines drop into a CSS file or just the shortcut of Bootstrap? It creates a pretty big file.
Oh, I'll show you that when I get into Materialize. Yeah.
But it's a library, right? It's a
Yeah, yeah. Actually, with Bootstrap library, it includes a CSS file and a JavaScript file. The JS file is more for animations, things like that. So we'll be getting into that later. I want to show you, if you go up to the top here. Come on. There we go. Here are some example pages made with Bootstrap. These are pretty cool. Let's check out, what was a good one? I think this one's good. I think last time for our talk, someone mentioned, will we be making responsive websites? I think this is an Italian site. Let's just translate it. And I'll show you an example. Bootstrap does that for you. Let me see if I can minimize this. Oh, I did. Stand out. All right. So let's say you're on a tablet, shrink the screen, shrink the screen, shrink the screen, keep going, keep going. You'll see that? Boom, you see that hamburger icon there? And it drops down. So it changed that dynamically as I was adjusting the screen. And it's cool too, actually the text will wrap around nicely. This might not be the best example. But as I shrink, it still looks pretty good. It looks like a good site, and it just does all of that automatically. Expand it, okay, we're back to normal. To do that dynamic coding with CSS, it's a pain. You would use what's called a media tag. You guys don't have to know this, but like media selector. These are like setting rules, so you'd have to say, okay, if the min width is this many pixels, do this. If it's this size, do this. If it's that size, do that. That's a pain. That's why Bootstrap is 6,800 lines of code. So you don't have to, yeah. I mean, if you want to get into that, go for it.
Is that an at sign?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that media here. But yeah, if you want to do this, you can look it up on your own time. I never do it. I use Bootstrap.
What is that functionality called when it can repurpose? Responsive.
Yeah. So, really cool thing. In 2014, Google released a paper called Google Materials. They got all their brightest designers to come up with this paper, essentially talking about what makes good design in Google's opinion. And this is a really cool site. I recommend. All these links, by the way, are on this syllabus here. What's going on? Let's refresh it. So you see all these links will be in this section here. Google Materials is right there. Where was I? So really cool paper. Let's say I want to know about what makes good typography. So all this theory on typography. If you're really into design, you can spend hours on this site. Different languages. Let's say, actually emotion's pretty cool. This page is very cool. This is kind of like physics with moving things around. How these different loading bars go. What happens when you click on elements, it kind of makes that ripple effect. Things, how they naturally pop up. What's this guy? Some physics. Moving things up and down. So this is really fun. I highly recommend checking this out. You can just go on the syllabus or just Google Materials. Now the cool thing is that a lot of people thought this paper was awesome, so they said, hey, let's make a Bootstrap version of this, inspired by this paper. And there are a few different versions of that, and the first one I want to go over is called Materialize. Let me see, I can see. Here we go. No, it's being too responsive. So,
What is too supposed to mean?
yeah, shifting. So in the Cold Steel videos, you guys get to play with Bootstrap a lot. So let's play with this guy a little bit for fun. So here are the directions to install. You can install it locally on your computer, or you can use what's called a CDN. And a CDN is essentially just reaching the document on a server. When I go to this link, you'll get this ugly code. This code's called minified, which means that they just all bunched it together so the file's smaller. It's not meant to be human readable. So if you can't read that, don't feel bad.
Is that what you see when you do the source code lookup on the web page, like you do the
Usually,
browser?
yeah, usually it's not a minified. No, usually not.
If you took out the min in that URL, Henry, would you get a standard CSS file?
Let's try. Yeah, no. always use a CDN because, and there's also a lot of advantages to CDNs. When you deploy your site on the web, and when someone else visits a site that uses this library, that information is cached on their computer temporarily. So when they visit your site, which uses this library, they already have those files in their cache. If that makes sense. So it can be fast. I actually put up some articles in the syllabus. I say why not use CDN and why use CDN. So there's pros and cons to both. Versus using a CDN or having files locally on your computer. I think in the videos he uses, he downloads them locally and then uses CDN later, I believe.
Is it like a Dropbox essentially, where you're just putting all your files somewhere else?
Yeah, so so this is just a link somewhere else, and you're using the HTTP request, which we'll learn about later, to get that information from a server somewhere. And this server could be located anywhere in the world. But usually it's copied to all the, like if there's a server in India, Eastern United States. So.
I feel like with an image or whatever, you can have the image stored in your folder, or you just have the.
Yeah, like so it uses this link tag.